All right, welcome back everyone. Now we start getting into the fun stuff. Now we got to get into the routers. And exactly how do we get into a router? Well, basically three ways. You can use your console, you can use the auxiliary, or your VTY lines. And let's elaborate on that. All right, let me show you my little packet tracer deal here. A router, and I'll pick the very top one. I'll maximize that. I'll zoom in. All right, when you're looking at the router, it has, well, in this case, this is a modular router. All right, you see it has many different slots. All right, but what we're talking about is how would I get inside the router in order to configure it? Well, normally if the router is not configured, meaning it has no configuration whatsoever, all right, there's no IPs on it, nothing of that nature, you will have to connect to the console port, which is right there, right? You do have a baby blue cable, which we have in the packet tracer. All right, let me minimize this. All right, and if you go to your cable section, that's that baby blue cable there. You will go from the RS-232 port to the console cable, and you make that connection to the router. And this is exactly what you're going to see. And let me see if I can move a little bit more your way. Woo-hoo, there we go. And this is exactly what you'll see in the examination, in the certification that you're going to take. You're going to be going into a computer that's actually connected through a console cable to the router or switch. You won't have to click on the desktop. It'll actually, that terminal will come up. You click terminal and you make sure, just verify, because normally the settings are already there, that the bits per second, it's 9600 and the flow control is none. If your bits per second they're not set to 9600, what's going to happen is, one, you still will go in, but you're going to see weird characters, like little heart symbols and pound signs and things of that nature, because it's too fast or it could be too slow. So you're going to see little characters. Now, through the registry, if you wanted to, you can actually change those bits per second. But again, we're taking a certification. Why would you want to mess with the bits per second anyway? All right, so you leave the defaults as was there, 9600, A none 1, none for flow control, none for flow control. Once you do that, you hit OK, and boom, that takes you inside the router. Hey, Laz, how come you never configured the router that way? Because I can't see that. That's just way too small, all right? And when you go take your test, it won't be that small. But this is just to show you how you would connect to a router that has no configuration whatsoever. You will use a console cable. Now, if you don't have a console cable available, what are the cable you can use? A rolled cable. That means you will use one of your UTP cabling, right? Or your unshielded twisted pair cabling, category 5. You will use a 568B standard on one side and the mirror image of that same standard on the other side, so the flip side, okay? And then you will use something called a terminal adapter that connects to your serial port of your desktop, has an RJ45 plug, just plug that thing right in there, and then to the console port of a router or switch. So that's how you would connect to a router if there was no configuration. You will have to use a console port. Nowadays, when you purchase a router, they usually like to have already configurations on there, like the Linksys. It has a default configuration, one of those Linksys wireless routers or D-Link or whoever. They have already default configurations. Then it's up to us to go in there and change that. But it allows us to connect through the network. So what they like to do is, in Cisco, they'll have passwords, which is Cisco, and then it'll have DHCP running. So all you basically got to do is plug in again, unshielded twisted pair cable, regular 568B on both sides, not mirrored or anything like that, to your switch, and then one to your computer. If you have a crossover cable, you can go ahead and go from the router directly to the PC. Since DHCP is running, the computer will then actually get assigned or leased an IP address from the DHCP server, and you can connect to the router and you can go inside. using the telnet lines, and that's where the VTY lines come in. Those are your virtual terminal lines. And we'll be learning how to configure all these different lines as we go through administrative commands in later sections. All right, but the console line and even the VTY lines are considered in-network or inbound, I believe the terminology is. Inbound configurations, because you're in the network, you're within the network, you're not outside of it, you're not external to it. All right, the last one is the auxiliary. The auxiliary, you see it right here above, right there where the mouse is. That is your auxiliary port. Your auxiliary port is just like a console cable. The only difference is it has modem pins. So it has the capability of attaching an external modem to that port. And then obviously, once you're in it, however you got in it to begin with, you would have to configure that port to work within the router, and then you can actually dial in to the router and do any other configurations that need to be done. That would be considered out of band configuration. What you need to understand though is that there's either the console port with no configs, you would use a console port to get in. The auxiliary port would be used if you're somewhere, because if you're using the auxiliary port, that means there's some sort of configuration in the router that somebody put in for you to be able to attach an external modem to for you to dial in. All right, out of bound. And then the last one would be the VTY lines, which you see nothing there, which you would probably be connected to one of the gigabit or fast Ethernet ports, and you can go in through whatever IP scheme they have designed in the router. So in any case, there are 3 different ways that you can connect to this router. Now, your telnet lines, remember, well, your VTY lines. Your VTY lines, you could use telnet or SSH. It's up to you how it's configured. Again, if you purchase a router, it may come with or something already pre-configured using DHCP, or it could have a GUI that you will connect to first, and then once you connect to it, you can do whatever it is that you want. Definitely, you will need to change all the passwords, just like you would on a wireless router that you purchase from the store down the road, right? You will go ahead in there and you would change default passwords, IP addresses, all these different things. But normally they do come this way, and then you can connect and do whatever changes. And then obviously, if you do change the IP scheme, you have to change the IP scheme on your computer. So you need to know how to IP address, but I know all of you know that by now, how to do IP addressing, especially in IPv4. So 3 ways to connect: console line, auxiliary line, and your VTY lines, which we will be configuring in all our routers because they fall under the administrative configurations of the router. All right, okay, well, that's it for this lesson. Very simple, very quick. 3 ways to connect to your router. I'll see you in the next lecture.